Now, programming from the Illinois Channel, an independent, nonpartisan corporation formed to provide nonpartisan coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois. For more information on the Illinois Channel, please visit our website at www.illinoischannel.org.
Just ahead, Senator Mike Hastings holds a press conference to give an update on the breach of the Illinois State Board of Elections. Then in about 15 minutes from now, we sit down with ABC political analyst Matthew Dowd as he discusses his new book, A New Way, Embracing the Paradox as We Lead and Serve, which explores America's growing political divide and how to solve it. Then in about 25 minutes from now, we talk to two mothers, and later Senators Conley and Thomas Cullerton, about an illness associated with strep throat that is going misdiagnosed and leading to further health complications among children. Following that, in about 40 minutes from now, Senators Thomas Cullerton, Paul Schimpf, and Michael Hastings hold a press conference to discuss a bill aimed at preventing veteran suicides. And finally, in about 1 hour and 10 minutes from now, we attend a press conference with home builders explaining why they're opposed to a bill that would tax home repairs. That's all just ahead, after a brief word from one of our advisory council members.
Hi, I'm Jim McNamee, President of the Illinois Public Pension Fund Association. Since 1985, we've worked to educate the public and those who serve as trustees and pension boards about issues that impact the financial health of publicly funded pensions. Our members manage over $18 billion in pension assets. That's a huge number. But we never forget those dollars belong to the men and women who've worked as firefighters, police officers, and as educators. We want them to know that their pension dollars are safely invested. They also want to know that someone will keep an eye on legislation that could threaten their pension. And that's why the Illinois Public Pension Fund Association is fighting against laws that would reduce the pensions earned by our members. And this is why we support the work of the Illinois Channel. Their unbiased, in-depth coverage of the pension reform issue allows us and our members to hear arguments on both sides of the pension issue, to follow legislation as it moves through committee, or to hear unedited interviews with key lawmakers as they discuss what changes are being considered. Pensions are very important. They're also very complex. Pension reform can't adequately be covered in sound bites. But the Illinois Channel provides a connection to the Capitol, the governor, and lawmakers that we all need to stay on top of key issues. Hi, I'm Jim McNamee, President of the Illinois Public Pension Fund Association. I watch the Illinois Channel, and I hope you do too.
Next, from Springfield, Senator Mike Hastings holds a press conference to give an update on the breach of the Illinois State Board of Elections. This runs about 15 minutes.
Just some brief remarks. We had a hearing today, a Senate subcommittee hearing on cybersecurity, and the topic of today's meeting was the hacking of our State Board of Elections in the last presidential election cycle. A few things just in terms of facts for those at home. It was reported that 200,000 names were hacked from the Illinois State Board of Elections website. In essence, it was 70,000 names. We had asked a series of questions to the State Board of Elections in terms of whether or not there was any patterns or surnames or geographic regions in terms which had a concentrated amount of names that were hacked. We actually found that there was a considerable amount of names from Galesburg, Illinois. So the Russians are hacking Galesburg or looking at Galesburg really closely. So whatever they're doing in Galesburg, you guys better watch out. But this is very, very serious because on the national level, we saw efforts to foreign agencies and foreign countries to penetrate voter registration databases and State Board of Elections. We saw it in Europe. We saw it across in different elections, to include France and Denmark. But in terms of Illinois, we learned that 7 IP addresses were used. 7 IP addresses were used that were linked back to the Netherlands. Now, the Netherlands IP addresses are associated with 2 servers, and bear with me now on the names of these servers. They're called Fancy Bear and Cozy Bear. Quite original name for hackers, but obviously they're very innovative. They're 2 of the largest hacking groups in Russia. These same groups are rumored to be tied to the FSB, otherwise known as the Russian Federal Security Services. They're responsible for the hack of DNC servers in 2016, and they're being run by King servers out of Russia. After hearing the State Board of Elections testimony today, these hackers were able to gain entry through the voter registration database. So where you enter your driver's license number, there was a failure to put a backstop on how much information you can actually put into that queue box where you put your information. That allowed for these hackers to send multiple packets to start phishing for information. Very, very serious. The other thing that we talked about today was who actually internally through our state electoral colleges or electoral systems have access to the State Board of Elections. And this is where it's the most serious. As the local election authorities update their election information, it updates the State Board of Election. That's very serious because it allows these very, very sophisticated hackers to access local municipality election systems through the State Board of Election. The State Board of Elections has acknowledged that. They acknowledged the fact that they had contacted the Illinois State Police and other entities, but my greatest concern is that local elected officials, I'm sorry, it's a very tongue-twisting word, local elected officials and electoral boards really need to start scraping their systems because there could be infected malware or software that lurks inside their systems. So what we're going to do out of this hearing is we've analyzed a few things. Number one is our office is going to send a letter to every elected office that manages elections. We're going to do that. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to file a resolution to encourage the State Board of Elections for them to go ahead and scrape and look at these local databases to make sure that none of these sophisticated foreign hackers are just sitting there. My gravest concern is this, is that we need to make sure that these attacks don't happen again. My view on this attack is that they're phishing for information in preparation for a future attack. Our democracy is so sacred that I was willing to die for it when I served in the military, and I know a lot of other people are willing to die for it as well. People should feel safe. People should feel that their elections are fair and that they're run appropriately. And that's part of the reason why I had that hearing. I think the answers we got from the State Board of Elections were very forthright. They were very honest. I think in some situations they went a little bit further than they should have in terms of some of the safeguards they got, and I had asked them, don't give away the keys to the house. I think this is very important. This is a bipartisan issue. I don't care if you're a Republican. I don't care if you're a Democrat. This is about you going to the ballot box and saying, I feel safe. The vote I cast is for one person, and you don't feel as if it's going to be changed at the last minute. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
But you're a Democrat. Your party has, pushed for more, for an easier time for people to register for voting on, and in many ways. Does it give you pause at all to, see that Illinois' voter registration had been hacked in that way?
The State Board of Elections stated today that they're being pinged every day by somebody. State agencies are being pinged every day by somebody. All of our federal agencies, I know for a fact, are being pinged every day by somebody. This is just the world in which we live. And I think that people should have that access to cast their vote, but we should also, as a state, protect these systems. We have the capability of doing it. And I think that some of the safeguards they took place and they stated today in their briefing, I thought it was, I'm reassured, but you can never be too reassured. You always have to be auditing your systems. You always got to be checking your systems. And you report on it, of all these data breaches. And, it's important that you're protected because some of that information out there, you don't want getting out there.
Did anyone from the BOE say anything other than just the names that were hacked, but like information-wise, what they fully got, these hackers?
Yes, they gave pretty good testimony in terms of that. You can look at the transcripts, but name, address, letters were sent out to those voters. 3,000 to 4,000 came back unreturned. That's something I want to get a little bit more of a handle on, is in terms of those that were unreturned. Is it because they don't live there anymore, or maybe they don't have the right information in there? I think that you really got to make sure that people feel protected. and the State Board of Elections sending a letter out. They sent it out 2 or 3 times, I believe, but we need to reassure people that their information is protected. I know some of the responses they got back from voters wasn't too pleasant, but then again, naturally, if your information was compromised, I wouldn't be too happy either. So.
Go ahead.
Speaking of responses from voters,
Yeah.
how do you think, or what would you like to tell voters in terms of how they should feel going into 2018, 2020?
Be vigilant about your information. If you feel as if your information's been compromised through data identity theft or whatnot, report it. Make sure you report it. If you see something, say something. That's my line I say back home. I want people back home because of this hearing to know that in Illinois, there's people like me that have a grave concern about this and are actually going to do something about it. We filed a legislation this session that said if there's been a data breach over 50 names, you have to report that to the subcommittee on cybersecurity. This is the first time in Illinois we've ever had in the Senate a subcommittee on cybersecurity. That's how important it is moving forward. And I think there's going to be a lot of technology bills, a lot of laws coming forward in the next decade, 2 decades that'll have to address some of these issues.
Cybersecurity isn't new, but the last election, with Russian hacking and all this stuff coming up, and it seemed like the IT folks in the Board of Elections, they weren't necessarily focused on where the hack was coming from, but what the action was, and it was to them it kind of seemed like it was sort of typical phishing, and you seem concerned about the source and that it's coming from Russia. So if this is just sort of your average sort of phishing expedition, what makes that more nefarious?
More nefarious is because as a soldier, before you go to battle, you prepare for battle. And if a foreign agency is going to go ahead and implement some sort of major attack, you have to know the infrastructure of what you're about to attack. And I will just tell you, a phishing expedition is just the start of a data analysis, a complex data analysis by a foreign entity. I know this because I've seen it before. And I can tell you right now that this is the start of people data mining and researching on where our vulnerabilities are in our system, and it's important to protect those. Now, just because of the fact these IP addresses came from the Netherlands and they're connected to the country of Russia, that should be even more alarming. Why is a foreign entity engaging in operations in our state? Not just our state, but also in Arizona. Our elections are for us. And if you want to go ahead and engage in our elections as a foreign entity, to me, that's a serious problem. And on the national level, our president and Congress have to address that. Part of the resolution, Senate Resolution 93 and Senate Resolution 94, encourages the U.S. Congress to start investigating these hacks into our election system. Because if they know how to operate through our system, not only at our state level, but through our municipalities, there's no telling what they can do. And to me, that's concerning because people back home should feel as if they're protected. Their vote is sacred. That's what makes our country great. And for me, as the chairman of the Cybersecurity Subcommittee, I'll do whatever I have to do to ensure that people feel secure in their voting process.
Local election authorities have been fairly vocal in the past about, every time the legislature adds, like I was saying earlier, an easier way to register to vote, is your call to have these local election authorities scrape their own processes. Is that not in?
Yeah, and if they don't, go ahead. If you want to call it an unfunded mandate, you can call it whatever you want. But if they want to get hacked, go ahead and let them get hacked. And then when the voters go back and they say, why is my information compromised? You know what I'm going to tell them? It's your fault. I asked for you to go ahead and audit this system. I think that sometimes, people expect a reasonable expectation of privacy, and then all of a sudden their stuff gets hacked, and then, everything hits the fan. So if you want to complain about this being an unfunded mandate, then fine. But if you don't care about people's security and their personal information, I have a problem with that. And I'll go back and I'll write to every local elected official and I'll tell them. That's okay.
You said that you're going to write a letter and file resolutions, and you also mentioned Senate Bill 707 to mandate reporting of cyber attacks. Is there any other that you would want to see passed at the state level to deal with this problem?
Well, there's a lot of cyber or technology bills that I filed. One of the most hot button issues this legislative session. I joke and I don't joke at the same time, but I've created more jobs in Springfield than the governor has in his last 2 years in office. I filed a bill called 1502. It's the right to know. So if a company is selling and collecting your information and selling it to a third party, you should have the right to know who they're selling that to. And you should have the right to go to the Attorney General and ask her to file some sort of a lawsuit to stop that from happening. You know, I've taken into consideration small businesses. I wanted to make sure that we don't stifle innovation or entrepreneurship in the state of Illinois. But I think people's information, their personal information, whether that be their social security number, to their sexual orientation, to whatever apps they use or whatever they use, that should be protected. And you have the right to know whether or not a company is putting profit over people. And I think you'll see that vote today. Oh, yeah. I'm excited. I hope so. It depends. I can tell you this much. We've been working really hard at this. And I'm excited about it because you go back home, we did a poll, statewide poll, 92% of the people, they feel as if their information is sacred. And if you want to vote no on that bill, well, then you're all about people selling your information to a third party. Go home and explain that to your sister who's on Facebook or whatever it is and shopping for whatever she shops for. I know that some of the stuff that you shop for, I know some of the stuff you Google, you don't want people to know about.
What's the opposition been like?
Like I said, I created more jobs in Springfield than the governor. So I think the good governor and, I hope he signs the bill. But if not, I'll remind him of it. Any other questions? I really, yes. So I just want to say thanks to you for at least covering this. It means a lot. Our like I said, our democracy is sacred. And for me, it's very important to let people know back home that I actually care and that people down here care and that aren't all corrupt politicians. I think people down here really know that, they have a good interest and a good heart in making sure people feel protected. So,
any idea why your Republican colleagues on the subcommittee didn't?
I think because my questioning went on for 20 minutes and I could have asked any possible question imaginable, I did. And, but Senator Connolly and Senator Tracy's not even on the subcommittee. She showed up because it's of that much of interest. And, Senator Stottleman and Senator Cunningham's not on the subcommittee for cybersecurity. He showed up because it's important to him, too. I can tell you this much. People back home are watching this. People in the Senate are watching this. They want to know what happened. But after the election, all of a sudden it fell off the grid because they're too busy worrying about Trump's first 100 days. I'm more worried about whether or not our election system's protected right now. That's a pretty big concern. And whether or not our next elections in 2020 and 2018, are they going to be protected? I hope so. Any other questions? Thank you very much for your time. Hi, Monique. How are you? You're very elegant today, Monique.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For years, the Board of Elections has complained they haven't had enough resources to do day-to-day operations, not to mention deal with something like this. I mean, what kind of answer lies in providing them more funding and more staffing given our current budget situation?
Why don't you tell the governor to go ahead and sit down with the respected leaders and act in good faith when negotiating a budget? I have. I think my views on the governor and this budget-making process are pretty clear. I think the questions that I ask them in the Appropriations Committee are very clear. And whether or not they want to answer those questions or not, that's up to them. But for some reason, they have a problem answering my questions. My questions aren't hard. People back home want to know, especially in my district where the south suburbs have seen the social services collapsing and our university having to reduce their programs by 22, or Interstate 80, otherwise known as Pothole Alley these days. Your budget impasse is really hurting people at home. So why don't you start leading instead of stop sitting around? So, anything else, Monique? I'll stay for you for as long as you want. Obviously so. Highest concentration of names. That was my concern. I'm like, Galesburg, that's interesting. But they're fishing and they're determining and they're going through our network structure and they're analyzing it. These people aren't dumb people. They're very, very complex people. And once you start analyzing a structure, you start finding other ways in. That's pretty serious.
You raised concerns that local election authorities may not have scrubbed their
Oh, yeah.
systems I mean, does the state need to direct them to do that explicitly? There was kind of a gray area there, whether or not they did that in these conversations with the FBI.
I agree. That's why I said I was going to write a letter to our local electoral officials, and then we're going to go ahead and introduce a resolution to urge the State Board of Election to go ahead and urge these people to, like the nice lady behind you said, I apologize, I don't remember her name, but they're going to argue that it's an unfunded mandate. But again, it's that it cuts both ways. I'm going to urge you to do something. You have the choice to do it. But if your system gets hacked, am I responsible anymore? I've put you on notice. I've told you there's other ways to get into these systems. You need to protect them. You need to protect our people.
Next, from Springfield, we sit down with ABC political analyst Matthew Dowd as he discusses his new book, A New Way, Embracing the Paradox as We Lead and Serve, which explores America's growing political divide and how to solve it. This runs about 10 minutes.
Matthew Dowd, thanks for joining us on the Illinois Channel.
Great to be here.
You recently wrote a book, and there's so much we could talk about, and we'll try to get as much in as we can in a rather limited time. But let's start off with your book. What's the title of the book, and why did you write it?
It's called A New Way, Embracing the Paradox as We Lead and Serve. And the reason I wrote was sort of a plea, actually, to the country and to leaders at all levels that we're in such a disruptive moment where there's great anxiety, great frustration, in some models, great destruction of many of our institutions. But we have to figure out a new way to lead through that. And it's not just designed for sort of Washington. It's really fundamentally designed for people locally to lead our leaders. And so it's written through a series of paradoxes, there's 8 of them, that how we have to figure out a way to balance those paradoxes in leadership models, whether it's for a foundation, a community group, a local legislator, a city, whatever it happens to be, because we're in such an important moment, we have to figure out a way to lead through that. And one of the big things I emphasize is putting country ahead of party.
And that's, I think, a good point, because we see such divisions these days. And we've had divisions in the past, but they seem more pronounced now. Your background, and probably why you wrote the book, but your whole life, in a way, is a transformation and your own journey of going from having been a Democrat and working with Democrats like Lloyd Bentsen in the past, and then you came to work as a political consultant to George W. Bush.
Yes.
And then you eventually kind of split with him.
And now vehement independent. Yes.
So most people, I think, tend to stick with one party or the other. So having ridden the fence on both sides, what's your, and this goes back to the point of the book, but what do you think when you see so many divisions? You know, just yesterday or this morning, Maxine Waters, the congresswoman from California, was saying, I wouldn't meet with the president. You know, she wants him to be impeached. We hear this hyper-partisanship coming from different sides of both sides. How do you deal with that? I mean, how do you process it yourself?
So I think this is a huge concern for our democracy, and I think the health of our democracy is at stake in this. It's because if you look about the history of democracies in the world, they basically rest on the idea that people have to be able to come out of their tribe and move into the common good, reach consensus, compromise, and do things in the common good. Every single democracy has succeeded, has been able to do that. Every single place that it's failed hasn't been able to come out of their tribe. We are in that tribal nature right now where the red people are getting redder, the blue people are getting bluer, and there's a huge group of people in the middle that feel totally unrepresented by this sort of back and forward food fight that's going on. And it's causing us to have a great inability to get and solve the big issues of today. Everybody says they agree on infrastructure. We can't get anybody to get together on. Everybody says they agree on tax reform. We can't get anybody to get together. Everybody says they agree on making the healthcare system more efficient. We can't seem to get together on that. And so I think we're in a moment, and I think it happens. It's happened a few times in our country's history, not in our lifetime, but in our country's history. And I was reflecting on, I went to the Lincoln Museum here in Springfield today, and I was reflecting on this. One of the times in our country's history was in the midst of the Civil War, and when we moved from an agrarian-based economy to an industrial-based economy. We are in that exact same moment where there's this huge battle going on, and we're looking for people that can lead us through that and say, put your party behind and come together for the common good.
And I don't know the extent to which you pay attention to Illinois state politics, but boy, the division's here. You know, we're the only state in the nation without a budget, and we have a governor and a House Speaker who are, let's say, equally powerful and are unwilling, they wouldn't say this publicly, but they're unwilling to work with each other, and so here we sit without a budget.
Well, it's a virus that started in Washington and is spreading throughout the country. And so it used to be the federal government doesn't know what they're doing. And then now it's sort of drifted out to many state governments, which have become equally as polarized and equally as divisive. There is still one level of government that's trusted, fundamentally trusted in our country, and that is local government, because people can see, feel, and touch it. And it's there and it's in their lives. But almost every other level of government, federal, state, they trust the state a little bit more so than the federal, but it's going across the country. And we have to figure out, as Americans, how do we stop this and go back to the model that really the founders of our country talked about. One of the biggest things our founders of our country warned against, and George Washington did it in his farewell address, was partisanship and hyper-partisanship. There's not one mention of political party in the U.S. Constitution or the Declaration of Independence. But now it seems if you put a jersey on, it doesn't matter what your side does, you're incapable of criticizing them. And it doesn't matter what the other side does, you're incapable of praising them for something good they did. And that doesn't work in a democracy.
You know, on one hand, I want to say, so what's the answer? On the other hand, just as a follow-up to what you just said, I thought it was interesting that in the recent healthcare initial first-stage failure, that you had members of the Republican Party in the House opposing their House Speaker and their President, which is interesting that it wasn't just let's go for the jersey and pass it on a party, but that they, for their own reasons, divided. But if you want to address that, but also what do we do about it? How do we overcome these divisions? And to what extent would you say we the people are the problem, that the politicians are a reflection of we the people and our own partisanship?
So I'll take it from the end. So the broad thing is that in the end we have to lead our leaders. Leaders in Washington don't lead. They follow, and they figure out where the country wants to go, or they figure out the aspirations and dreams of the country and where they fundamentally want to move. And then the best leaders get about a half a step in front of where the country already wants to go. And so I think it's absolutely true that it is not going to change until we change. It is not going to change until we stop in our lives. We stop being divisive, and we start gathering information. One of the biggest problems is we have no common set of facts, right? Everybody has their set of facts, and if you have 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of facts, you can't come together. You can come together if you have opinions, but you can't come together with a common set of facts. A huge part of the problem is because people in their lives are accessing information which confirms their own biases. So conservatives and Republicans watch Fox and listen to certain radio programs and read certain blogs and go on certain websites. Democrats and liberals do the same thing. They watch MSNBC, they read certain blogs, they listen to certain radio stations, and it confirms their existing biases and prejudices. We have to break out of that. We have to access information and look for information and try to come to some agreement in our community. And when that happens, this is what I think is going to happen, and which it always does, is it builds in around the country in places like Springfield or Chicago or Austin, Texas or Boise, Idaho, and it builds, and then finally our leaders recognize it, or our leaders emerge that recognize it and then are able to move it in a constructive manner. But we have to change before they change.
And on the other hand, I'm somewhat always surprised at how dynamic the nation is. And I remember growing up in the 60s, the transformation of the civil rights movement and how attitudes changed. We've similarly had quite a change as far as how we view the homosexual movement.
Marriage.
And marriage, and now transgender. And I think the American people we move so fast, in many cases shockingly fast, that we are a dynamic society and fairly accepting after we kind of blow off some steam.
But we have to, I think one of the things, and I think that's a really good point, one of the things we have to recognize is that change sometimes moves faster than some people are able to navigate, right? And I think for a lot of people in the country, the change of the culture, the change of the economy, all of these are sort of shifting big, huge plates that are going on in our country. Donald Trump, everybody talks about, Donald Trump isn't the catalyst for the change. Donald Trump is a result of all of this change. And I think there's a group of people in the country that say, whoa, 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 it's moved too fast. I want to go back to the way it was, where the way my father or mother, the job they had, or the communities, the way they looked like this, or my schools, the way they were this. And so I think it requires, and I think the missing part of this on both sides of this, is there's an empathy gap. right? There's an inability to see where other people are in their lives, what fears they have.
People as enemy rather than understanding.
And meeting them and sort of understanding their fear and not saying, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, why don't you come along, but understand where they are and allow people to go along on a timetable. As you say, in our history, change has occurred. We've had a lot of change. But the best people involved and leaders involved are able to sort of understand those people's fears and help people move along to the transformation that ultimately will come. But we have to give people a chance to catch up to all this change.
Our time is limited, so let me close out with this. As you are here in Springfield as we tape just to address the Manufacturers and Retailers Association, part of your job, how much speaking do you do around the country? And when you speak to a group like this today, how do you decide what message you want to impart on?
So I probably give, I would say, 15 or 16 speeches around the country. Usually people bring me in to sort of understand the politics of the day because of my job at ABC News. Today I'm going to talk about somewhat from my book, but how much of responsibility and accountability people like here in Springfield, Illinois have a responsibility. We can't say, why won't the president do this, or I love when the president does this, and they're the ones, that's the one, we're going to put all our power into some higher authority distant from here. Is to embrace their responsibility of the change they can do. The interesting thing about the business community, which I'll say today, is the business community is really beginning to be on the cutting edge of the change in our country. It normally was politicians pushed the business community in a certain way. Now, if you look around things that have happened, the business community is really leading on a lot of the issues, and I would say to them to keep pushing them on that. Be the leaders. Don't wait for somebody else.
Matthew Dowd, we could talk longer, but time is short, so we appreciate you joining us.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Next, from Springfield, we talked to two mothers, and later Senators Conley and Thomas Cullerton, about an illness associated with strep throat that is going misdiagnosed and leading to further health complications among children. This runs about 15 minutes.
Ladies, thanks for joining us. And you are both mothers of children who have been impacted by disease I think most of us have never heard of. And I wanted to get your stories about what happened to your child and then how you happened to be, which you probably didn't expect to be standing here in the state capitol, lobbying for legislation.
Right.
Kate, what is your story?
My son, on his 8th birthday, he was completely normally happy functioning before. On his 8th birthday, he woke up with strep throat. He then woke up a completely different child. He can no longer function. He developed extreme OCD. He became anorexic because he was scared of food. He was scared of water, so he wouldn't bathe for 2 months. He had motor tics so bad that we thought he was having seizures. We begged our doctors for answers. We had no idea what it was. They were telling us that we needed to put him into an institution, that we may never get him back again. He screamed in pain from the minute he woke up to the minute he went to sleep. And my 2 younger kids I couldn't even take care of them. They were taking care of themselves because I was with him constantly. Finally, after 2 months of him going through this pain and us not knowing what it is and almost having to give up and put him in an institution, we found a doctor that said, I think he has PANDAS. Let's get his blood work. We did the blood work. He had strep titers 6 times higher than normal reference range. He needed high-dose antibiotics. He started coming back to us. He started to eat again. He started to be able to read again and started to be able to leave the house. His brain was so inflamed, though, because what had happened is he got the strep throat, so his own antibodies, instead of attacking the strep, attacked the back of his brain, which was causing all of these motor and emotional functions to decline. So we went ahead. We found one of the top doctors in the United States right in Hinsdale, Illinois. We decided to go ahead with IVIG, which is fresh blood antibodies from other donors, to reset his immune system. We couldn't afford it. It was $12,000 for one treatment. Our family, I have a big family, they decided to do a fundraiser. They raised the funds. My son had the treatment.
And let me interject. You had to be paying for it yourself because it wasn't covered by insurance. Is
Correct.
That right?
It was the recommended treatment to cure him, and it wasn't covered by insurance. We went ahead with it because we knew it would give our son his life back. So we raised the money, we did the treatment. 6 months later, after my son had missed almost all of second grade, he was 100% back in third grade, football star. Now he's in sixth grade, football star, basketball star, straight A's, honor roll student. Not a symptom again. So.
And when he had strep throat, how quickly did his symptoms of the panda disease manifest itself?
It was almost within a day or so. The strep throat first came on. We did low-dose antibiotics to treat the strep, but the antibodies were already attacking his brain. It was he was too weak to fight it, so we didn't pair the two and two together until 2 months later when a doctor brought it up again.
And what happened to your child?
I actually have 3 children who have pandas, so it's a little bit more complicated to tell that whole story. But similar things happened in my family. So, you know, literally overnight, my one child stopped eating. And every food, every smell of the food would completely turn him off. He had increased urinary frequency, bedwetting, and had to touch certain things in a certain way. And having been a social worker in a special education field in the past, I recognized immediately that something was very wrong. However, when I brought him to the pediatrician, at that time, there wasn't enough awareness. They didn't understand. And even when I said, I think this might be as a result of the strep throat he recently had, they refused to swab him for strep throat, which is a very easy procedure. So we went for about 6 months, and then eventually I got them to swab for strep throat, and he turned up positive immediately. And then I knew what we needed to do because I had been doing research.
You were just looking for on your own, just stuff that looking for. Here's the symptoms, and you found what online that there was a disease called pandas.
Right.
When you said you had 3 children, they were all impacted by this, which is shocking to hear. Did you then, on the second and third time, know what you were dealing with?
I was much quicker on the uptake, yeah.
When you had the treatments, did you also have, the costly fact, and did your children all respond in kind? Does it leave? Is there a legacy from the disease, or did they hopefully cover entirely?
My kids responded very quickly to the IVIG. And now are doing fantastically. I've got one in college, one going to college, and one who's going to be a senior in high school. And but we did empty a college fund in order for them to be able to be treated.
And so you are here with some other mothers who are similar stories, and you went to Senator Cullerton and explained it, and now the bill that would mandate insurance coverage has passed the House. It will be going to the Senate shortly. How much do you know? How much would that cover the vast majority of the cost of treating the disease?
We believe so. Oh, yeah. Yes.
And the other thing I would guess is, I think you would argue, as far as some people might say, well, what's this a cost to raising the cost of all the rest of us? But I think you would say, look, you were taking your children to doctors for one thing after another, and then talking to some of the other mothers, when it was misdiagnosed, it's not like the cost of this treatment versus nothing, it's the cost of all the other things that are being done that were ineffective, right?
It is far more costly to ignore treating pandas than it is to just treat it correctly in the first place. Because these kids are going to drain on the state for a lifetime if we don't just treat them appropriately.
If my son had been put into an institution, it could have been lifelong, versus now he's got his childhood back. And we're not on antibiotics, we're not, he's back, and we're not costing the state any money.
Well, when you were saying about how the pain your son was in and just screaming like that for 2 months, I can just imagine the hell that would put you through as a parent.
Yep,
it's really scary. These children's brains are inflamed, and that has to hurt. Yeah.
Is it I know you're not a doctor, but does it just impact the lining of the brain, or?
No, it affects the basal ganglia, which controls movement and emotion. So, it is an autoimmune encephalotide, a type of brain swelling. Mm-hmm. So it's really important that we treat these kids as quickly as we can.
And that's right. Well, let's close out this. It's good that you're not only getting legislation perhaps passed here as we stand, but that you're also raising awareness. What would you say to anyone whose child gets strep, as almost everyone will, that, A, they just ought to be aware that this could be a follow-up disease, right? And what advice and where can they go for more information if they want it?
Well, I certainly wouldn't want to scare everyone out there because strep is a very common childhood illness. But if you see behavior changes after a strep infection, there are people that you can call for help. I mean, we run a support group for families in Illinois, and you can find us at www.pas.care or on Facebook. And we try to stay up ahead of the research almost and give them the information that they need, find doctors for them, and even provide grants for families who are in search of medical care and can't get it covered by insurance. So.
And I think one of the mothers said that their doctors, in fact, it might have been you, but some of the doctors don't even believe this exists as a disease. So if you run into a doctor who doesn't accept that this is a proper diagnosis, then you might have to know that there are other doctors out there that are aware of it.
There are definitely other doctors here in Illinois who treat pandas appropriately, and so I would recommend to those families that they find our support group and get in contact with the 600 plus members that we have who've been working really, really hard to get their children well.
Is that just in Illinois, the 600, or is that nationwide?
It is just in Illinois. It's our local support group, so Illinois and the surrounding states, because they include members who come into Illinois to see the doctors here.
Senators, thanks for joining us on the Illinois Channel, and we wanted to hear about a rather rare disease that I had personally never heard about, and I think from talking to some of the mothers, they've had problem having this diagnosed. They came to you, and now we're working on some legislation that might address some of the problems they've had having their children treated for this. Let's just start, Senator Cullerton, if I would, with you.
So this was brought to me probably about 4 years ago, and we started off initially with creating a task force. It's called PANDAS, which confuses some people at times. They think it's talking about a bear, but it's actually pediatric autoimmune neurological disorder associated with strep. So children can catch this disease, and then doctors aren't really on board yet entirely and haven't been really made aware to start diagnosing for it. And it's really, every child is susceptible to strep. And it turns children just upside down entirely. There's tics, there is disorders that could go along with the sense of autism and everything else. So we found out that insurance companies weren't even looking at it, they weren't talking about it, they weren't providing for it. So this bill will start to address that. And a lot of that is the work from the advocates of the mothers who brought it to me back 4 years ago, and through the task force we set up initially. And part of the biggest thing is to raise awareness.
And Senator Connolly, what would this bill? It's HB 2721. What would this do legislatively?
Well, first of all, the disease. My wife and I have 3 children now in their 20s, and I don't know of a parent who hasn't had a child who had strep throat. And the notion that strep throat it manifests itself not in the, I've got a scratchy throat, I've got a fever, but it looks psychological, so it gets misdiagnosed. What the bill will do is essentially provide a treatment for these children to the point where they get back to square one. By and large, when these parents came to me, the parent in me said, my goodness, all of our kids had strep throat almost on a routine basis, and if we treat it at the outset, it's simply strep throat that goes away. But it's something that Senator Cullerton's done a terrific job of bringing awareness to this, and this bill will provide the coverage and the medical care they need to help their children overcome this and move on to a productive life.
Am I right that currently what this would do, would it mandate coverage, that insurance companies cover this?
It would have insurance companies cover this. And truthfully, when you talk, the study out of Massachusetts, it's 0.003 cents onto a policy. But the fact is if a child gets misdiagnosed and ends up getting symptoms of Tourette's and they make it a psychological disorder, we're talking about a child that's going to be in the system and cost people for the rest of that child's life. If this doesn't get caught and go away, the child will not go back to a productive life. The child will not go back towards a receptive, growing individual within the state and who can be a taxpayer, but they'll be somebody who's reliant on state dollars for the rest of their life.
Are the insurance companies still opposing this? Or?
So in the House, there was an initial opposition. They filed an amendment, and we got pretty much everybody off. It passed in the House 114-0. We have great bipartisan support here in the Senate so far. I believe we're close to 22 sponsors and getting more every day. We have a great group of moms down here who've been advocating for this. The board of the group has been down talking to legislators all day, as well as talking to people in their districts. So I think we're going to be in great shape when we bring it up next week in committee.
And has anyone talked to the governor about it? Do we know where they stand?
I don't know. I know that the insurance industry has talked about just a small tweak here and there, but as Tom said, I think there's wide bipartisan support on this, and we're hopeful. I mean, 114-0 is somewhat telling in the House, and certainly we'd like to replicate something like that in the Senate. And when it gets to the second floor, I know I would advocate for signature.
When would it become effective, the bill?
I believe it would be on January 1, but I'd have to verify on the bill. So don't quote me, even though I'm now on tape saying it. But
well, with all the coverage we often do of nothing getting done at the Capitol, it's good to have something that's actually moving.
Well, thank you. It's and it's a great effort on both for both parties, and truly, it's something that helps our children. And if we can't come down here and do that, then why else would we come down?
All right, Senator Cullerton and Senator Connolly, thanks for joining.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
Next from Springfield, Senators Thomas Cullerton, Paul Schimpf, and Michael Hastings hold a press conference to discuss a bill aimed at preventing veteran suicides. This runs about 20 minutes.
First of all, thank you very much for coming today. My name is Senator Tom Cullerton. I represent the 23rd District of DuPage County. To my left is Senator Paul Schimpf. He represents down in Southern Illinois, and to my right is Senator Michael Hastings, who represents the South Suburbs. We all sit on. I chair the Veterans Affairs Committee. Paul is Senator Schimpf is the minority spokesperson. And I thank you all for coming today to talk about the issue. We're going to talk about just what we found and where we're at now with the veteran suicide bills that are going through the chamber right now. Paul and I both served on the Veteran Suicide Task Force, a year-long initiative that took us all over the state to talk about veteran suicide. And I'll go into my sort of prepared statement. House Bill 2647 is a collection of comprehensive recommendations that work to ensure veterans have better access to services, treatment for mental trauma and depression, as well as better access to employment opportunities. A theme throughout the process is finding ways to access veteran resources promised to the state, as well as the disconnect between federal and state resources. House Bill 2647 creates a connection between the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs and the U.S. Department of Defense to help streamline and remove redundancies when returning veterans to redeem their benefits. One veteran lost to suicide is one too many. The proposals outlined in this legislation are common sense solutions to help Illinois remove our barriers between veterans and the resources they qualify for. This initiative wasn't compiled in haste, over 1 hour, over 1 week. It was heard through a year-long testimony, inputs, concerns raised by veterans, their families, and veteran organizations throughout the state. This is a testament to their hard work. I thank Senator Schimpf for being on that task force. I thank Senator Hastings for his continued support of veterans consistently. I'm proud to advance this measure, and we will start moving this forward. It passed through committee yesterday, through the Veterans Affairs Committee yesterday, so we are now on second reading, and at this point I'll let Senator Schimpf say a few comments. Also, just so you know, I was in the U.S. Army from 1990 to 1993. I did not attain the level of either of these two fine officers, so if you see them push me around, they'll probably have me do push-ups later. It'll work out really well. Senator Schimpf, pardon me.
Thank you, Senator Cullerton. Thank you all for coming today to this press conference. My name is Senator Paul Schimpf. I represent the 58th Senate District in southwestern Illinois. I am the minority spokesperson in the Veteran Affairs Committee. I was also a member of the Veterans Suicide Task Force. I'd like to echo what Senator Cullerton said. There was a lot of hard work. That organization did a lot of good work. We had 6 different hearings across the state. We had a number of witnesses come and testify, and we produced a report that really was the beginning of a conversation of what we can do to try to address this problem. There have been numerous studies done about how many veterans we lose a day to suicide. As Senator Cullerton said, losing 1 veteran a day is one too many. Right now, the latest studies show that we're losing 20 veterans a day to veteran suicide. And that's unacceptable. If there's anything that we can do as lawmakers in the state of Illinois, this is not a partisan issue. This is something that we all agree on. We need to do a better job. The VA does good work, but the VA can always improve. I'm proud to be a part of the Veteran Suicide Task Force. I'm proud to be able to help work on this issue in the Illinois Senate. I look forward to working with not only my 2 colleagues that are here today, 2 of my fellow veterans, but also the entire Illinois Senate. Also, I think all the members of the General Assembly. This is something that we do want to get right. We want to make sure that whatever tools the Illinois Department of Veteran Affairs needs, any support that we can give them, we're going to provide that. So I am going to be the chief co-sponsor of this bill in the Illinois Senate, and this is a topic that is something that transcends politics. It's something that is important, and it's something that I look forward to working on here in the next couple weeks.
Good morning, everyone. Senator Mike Hastings. I represent the south suburbs of Chicago. And for those you don't know, Senator Schimpf is a Naval Academy graduate, and me being a West Point graduate. So we may end up wrestling here on the ground. But the one thing about every one of us here is that we're a combined arms team. There's no bipartisanship in terms of issues that affect veterans. Illinois is the best veteran-friendly state in the entire country, and I think all of us can be proud of that, and those that serve on the Veteran Affairs Committee, we're going to continue to strive towards that. So whether it's the Illinois Veterans Grant that we offer to returning veterans in Illinois to give them an education, to Illinois Joining Forces, where we provide access to jobs for veterans, to a Veteran Suicide Task Force. This is the least we can do for our men and women returning back home from overseas and those that have served. And I can't wait for the next few steps we have here with House Bill 2647, which will be coming out of the Senate here. It's on second reading. But there's a multitude of veteran initiatives right now that are in the hopper that we're working on, and I think will overall benefit not just veterans, but it'll benefit Illinois. And Illinois is in a tough time right now, and I know that if veterans are able to serve our country, fight our wars, they're able to come back into our workforce and serve our state and make our state a better place. So with that, I thank my colleagues. I thank all of you for your time. Very rare do we thank you for your time, but really appreciate our veterans and what they do, and I look forward to this bill passing. Thank you very much.
Do we have questions? Yes.
This multitude of initiatives in one breath, how are these pieces of legislation going to help make life easier for our veterans returning and their issues going forward?
So one of the priorities, I'll give you just a small example, was a bill we passed out before, but also one of the things that addresses here is making sure that our VA is capitalizing and capturing all the federal dollars that are available. We stand a lot of times to lose federal funding, whether it's in this issue, other areas, but part of this bill actually moves forward, making sure our Department of Veterans Affairs captures every federal dollar available to the state of Illinois and moving forward. You'll see a lot of the times in the disability community and the disabled community, they look towards capturing federal dollars when it comes to mental health. Not with veterans, but just on other issues as well. So a lot of times we end up missing federal dollars. This is going to instruct the Veterans Affairs Organization and Department of Veterans Affairs to capture every dollar that's available for the state of Illinois.
Now,
Go ahead.
Well, one of the things that I learned when I was working on the Veteran Suicide Task Force is that this is what we used to call in the Pentagon a wicked problem. It is very complex. There's no easy solution to it. One of the things that makes this such a challenge is there is a stigma in the veteran community about saying that it's a sign of weakness to seek help. This bill asks that the Illinois Department of Veteran Affairs actually do some messaging to try to address that. It also, the bill, there were a number of findings that in the Illinois Veteran Suicide Task Force. This bill seeks to have the Department of Veteran Affairs really take some actions based on those findings in the task force report.
Well, Senator, I'm glad you mentioned that because that was one of my next questions. The stigma, you know, a lot of progress has been made. If you had a broken arm, and someone said, "Hey, you got to get to the ER." Right. Oh gosh, what if somebody finds out? You know, and if you had they call it behavioral health now. If you had a problem that way, you know, you'd feel a stigma. If you had a broken arm, well, of course you'd get help. And it sounds like that message is only part of the way there when it comes to removing the stigma from behavioral health and suicide.
I agree with you, and that's just one of the things. One of the other challenges that we're finding with veterans as well is we say that we're much more connected as a society because we're all tied in with our smartphones, but yet one of the key things that you have to have for your well-being is the ability to interact with people, talk with those who have shared experiences. This bill talks about how we should emphasize having veteran service officers who have some combat experience. It also talks about how we can try to help the veteran service organizations, groups like the VFW, so that veterans can talk with each other. That's something that really does wonders for mental health, is just being able to talk about the challenges that we face.
I just want to elaborate a little bit more. You know, legislators sometimes don't have a clue what it's like to stand in the shoes of a veteran. I think the one thing you see here with us three is that we actually laced up our boots and served our country, and both Paul and I overseas. You know, I've been to Iraq, to the borders of Syria, the borders of Iran. I've lost soldiers to suicide. My commander suffers from depression, suffers from mental health. No matter how tough you are, no matter how strong you are, no matter how you know, what type of a bad man you think you are, this stuff will creep up on you. And all the stuff that I've seen overseas, whether it be a car bomb, rocket attack, people getting shot, you know, puts a significant toll on you as a person. And, you know, I think it's important that we realize that people need help.
You know, in Vietnam, now most of us, except Lee, too young to remember, folks coming home from Vietnam, and we hear that, you know, we kind of turned our back on those guys, and now in the 90s, 21st century, it's gone the other way, almost so much to go over the top, and in some cases exploitive. You know, if you go to a pro football game or something like that, I mean, in a way, it's almost too much. I'm wondering if our response to veterans and all then and now plays any role in what you guys are talking about.
I don't think you can ever go overboard in treating mental illness. That's just my perspective. And we as a legislative body over the last year, 2 years I should say, we fought for medicinal marijuana for PTSD, something that this governor didn't want to do. And I'll just tell you right now, the Vietnam generation, they've been pushing for that for as long as I can remember. Now, some people may have some ulterior motives, and, you know, whatever that may be is one thing, but whether it's PTSD for marijuana, whether it's allowing military service to count for college credits, whether it's giving property tax relief to those disabled veterans and their surviving spouses, to providing mental health treatment, I don't know if you've looked around the country, but I think we're leading the way in terms of initiative for veterans. And it's all a combined arms effort. And that's the one thing that I really love about Illinois. Most people don't have a lot to love about Illinois, but the one thing I do love about Illinois is the fact that regardless of what party you're with, we could all get behind this issue, and that's taking care of our veterans.
Senator Hastings, what was the year-long process like? I mean, you traveled around the state, it sounds like, different areas. Which areas did you go to, and does anything stick out from what you heard from veterans?
I think the one miscommunication is the benefits you receive from the federal government and the state government, and that needs to be clarified. And the coordination between the two needs to be better. And I think every veteran understands that. And we understand that too, because, I get veteran benefits from the VA, just like everyone, every other veteran has access to it. And there are some serious disconnects, but again, through communication, through good relationships, I think we can work through that.
And just so, the Suicide Task Force, we were down at Scott Air Force Base. We were out in Jim Oberweiss's area. I'm trying to remember the community college now. We were up in McHenry County. We did down in Cook County, as well as meetings over the phone, bringing all the organizations together. But we had 6 meetings, and we could make sure that our press people have all the different locations we were at. And it was one true message throughout. There was sort of a feeling of loss, a feeling of sort of a disconnect, and not knowing where to turn. And whether it was they didn't know who to talk to at a community college. I will have to say some of our community colleges have the best resources for veterans. They get them right in. They help them with the paperwork to learn how to get your DD-214 and then actually apply for your college fund, apply for all the different grants that are available to you. So our community colleges and our universities do an incredible job of reaching out to make sure that veterans have that access. Because here in Illinois, we definitely value veterans going back to school. It's been a big push from this General Assembly long before all of us even got here. Mike and I came here in 2012. Paul got recently elected, and this was something that's been going on for 15, 20 years, making sure our veterans have an access to a higher education. And we were very pleased, and we want to make sure that they know the ability to get the Helmets to Hard Hats program as well through the state of Illinois so that we can get them into job training programs. The Teamsters actually have a program right now where they're on military bases getting guys CDL licenses. And then and that's a federal initiative throughout. The city of Chicago just opened up in one of its colleges a cybersecurity opportunity for veterans to go to school for cybersecurity issues. So we're pushing as hard as we can in Illinois. Illinois, if you're going to be a veteran, as Senator Hastings says, is probably the top state to do it because we do take care of them and we do want them back and we do want them educated and in the workforce as fast as possible.
No, it's just, this is something where I think it's good policy to support veterans, not only because, we do owe them a debt of gratitude. They put their lives on the line, they made sacrifices for us, but also, quite frankly, the challenges that we face as a state are such that, we need everybody to work together to solve them. Well, if you're a veteran and you've had a successful tour of duty in the military, you have demonstrated that you can work with people from across the political and social spectrum. So it really does make sense both to support veterans because it's the right thing to do. We owe them a debt of gratitude, but also our veterans are the people that have demonstrated that they can work together with people from across the political and social spectrum. So I would like to just reiterate, thank you for covering this event. This is a very important bill. This is a tremendously important issue, and I'm proud to be working with my colleagues to support it.
If a veteran is struggling, what do you recommend their first step into seeking, help would be?
I think the VA right away.
The VA has a 24-hour crisis hotline. I unfortunately don't have the number with me that I can give you right now, but that's something that we talked about during the Veterans Suicide Task Force. They do have a 24-hour crisis hotline that is manned. It's not, if you call that, you will not get an automatic message saying that, somebody will get back to you later. So the VA is a tremendous resource. There are also just a number of great groups throughout the state that are working to help veterans. Team Red, White, and Blue, obviously the Legion and the VFW. There are resources out there, and as my fellow senators touched on earlier, and as was asked in the question, there are things that are wrong with our country, but we treat our veterans a lot better now, than we did a couple decades ago, and that's something that I'm very proud of.
Military One Source is another opportunity for veterans to contact if they have thoughts of suicide. The other one is townships. Local townships have family services, therapy that they provide. In the south suburbs, I know that from New Lenox Township, sorry, I'm speaking. Sorry, yelling at me. Just to reiterate,
so you can tell we're
yeah,
rookies. We
I know.
We don't do this as well as the leadership does.
Yeah. Soldiers they just tell you how it is. It's just the way it is. But, military one source is a great opportunity, and then local townships. So in the southwest suburbs, Orland Township, New Lenox Township, Rich Township, and Bremen Township all have a youth and family services department where they offer psychiatric evaluations, and if you're having suicide thoughts, they can refer you on from there. So there is ample opportunity. The VA, though, I'll just tell you right now, they have counselors on staff all the time. And this is something where, although it may have been hidden back in the Vietnam generation to help people, it's way out in the open now, and people understand that PTS is a very serious thing. It's not a disorder. It's just something that comes from combat and other things that happen maybe in the military. So.
Next, we talked to Cynthia Fleischle, the executive director of the Illinois Grape Growers and Vineyards Association, about Illinois' growing wine industry. This runs about 10 minutes.
Cynthia Fleischle, thanks for joining us on the Illinois Channel. As the executive director of the Grape Growers and Vineyards Association of Illinois, I think a lot of viewers will know that they've gone out to some local winery. They may not realize the extent to which the Illinois wine industry has been growing. What can you tell us about that growth over about the last 12 to 15 years?
Well, in 1995, we only had 13 wineries, and now Illinois has 108 wineries, and the growth has been completely dependent upon the Illinois Department of Agriculture. They have been so supportive of our industry, and they provided funds for us to do workshops, and we've had individuals decided to invest in their future in Illinois in a winery versus leaving Illinois. Some of our wineries, they actually were factory workers and they were laid off, and they decided at that point, after 26 years in working in Quincy, Illinois, that they might as well invest in a winery at that point. And it was clearly because the state had provided the resources for us to be able to do the workshops, and then they learned that they could do that. So they invested in Illinois as a result of it. And numerous people, a number of people used their retirement money to stay in Illinois directly as a result of those workshops that we did.
That's interesting. And how is that the winery doing, that those people that you mentioned?
They're doing very well. We have we are actually employing over 4,000 people in rural Illinois, and that's incredible because in rural Illinois there are not that many jobs. So without the support of the state, we would not have been able to grow as we have.
And I was going to say, first of all, are you still putting on these workshops if people are hearing this and saying, well, maybe I'd like to know what's involved in starting a winery?
Yes, we are. Fortunately, the state has been very supportive. The Department of Agriculture has been very supportive. And through those grants, we do a series of regional workshops. And the workshops are, again, to help the growers grow grapes better and to do different canopy management, different soils. They're actually infusing nematodes and seeing how the nematodes are moving from one vine to the next. It's incredible. SIU Carbondale is one of our partners, and so is the University of Illinois Extension Office, and they are the ones who are really doing a lot of research for us.
Do you have a top-line number of how much revenue is being produced by the Ventures Association, the winery?
$700 million is our economic impact to Illinois. $700 million.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of money. It is, and we haven't grown much since 2012. There were 105 wineries in 2012, and now we have 108. So it's kind of dropping off a little bit.
As far as the level of growth, am I right, or is it just maybe my impression? You have wineries throughout the state, but has most of the growth been in the southern part of the state?
A great amount of the growth is there, but there's been growth in central Illinois and northern Illinois. We have some beautiful award-winning wineries and wines out of the northern part of the state. We've got Galena Cellars, you've got Linford, you've got August Hill, Illinois Sparkling Company, you've got Aqua Viva, there's just a number of Mossbach. There's just a number of wineries up there. And then you have central Illinois, the Land of Lincoln wine trail. You have the Dannenbergers, and you've got West of Wise, and you've got Willow Ridge. Willow Ridge was a centennial farm that he diversified part of his farm, decided to grow grapes as a result of one of these workshops, grew the grapes, and he won Best of Show last year during the wine competition.
And you know, the thing I would say, and the Illinois Channel has gone to Southern Illinois and profiled a number about 10 years ago, a number of these wineries as they were starting off. It's not just about giving people something to do on a Saturday, but I mean, it is a quality of life in that you have these interesting places to go to, and now there's been such an explosion. You were telling me off camera about what was the one winery where they built like a big cave that you can go in?
Oh, it's Walker's Bluff in Carbondale, Illinois. It has a cave that is it's a wine cave that's monumental, and in the center of the cave it has a huge, it looks like the Knights of the Round Table, and it's a wine tasting area. So the wine master stands in the center, and then there's probably 50 people that can taste wines all around that.
Typically you pay so much for a glass or something like that and you sample.
You can sample. Some people don't charge for samples and some people do. I mean, it's anywhere from $1 for 3 samples to $5 for 3 samples, and then you buy anything after that.
And am I right that a lot of these places will then also have maybe a cheese bar or just things you can eat? So it's a fun way to spend an afternoon, let's say, going out, especially in the beautiful weather in the spring or the fall.
Yes, it is. And a lot of the organizations, they either have a restaurant that they've opened up as a result of the business. They also have entertainment on the weekends. Many of them have entertainment. They'll have artist demonstrations. They'll have paint nights for women and for other people. It's been a booming industry and a very community, family-oriented industry to be a part of.
That's what I was going to say. You know, a lot of these smart communities, the only thing that might have been there is a little mom and pop bar, and now they have something that really changes the social dynamic of what you can do in these small communities, right?
Yes, and I mean, the wine drinkers tend to be a little bit, they tend to be more educated and not that those that are involved in the industry are not, it's just that they like to just go and relax, have a good time, listen to music, unwind. In fact, our governor makes it a practice of going to one of the Central Illinois wineries almost on a weekly basis, just so he can get away and have private time.
Now, if someone wants to, you probably have a website and there's probably information, right? Both about maybe some of these classes, but also do you have links to the other wineries so that people, if maybe they're going to Carbondale area, there's going to be a multitude of wineries in that area. They could make their own wine trail, right?
That's exactly right. If you go to www.illinoiswine.com and you can go to the events section, and all of our special events. We have a couple of special, really awesome events coming up. In June 16th and 17th, we have the Ottawa Two Rivers Wine Festival. It's wine and jazz in Ottawa. And then we have the Illinois State Fair Wine Experience. We'll be with the craft brewers and the Illinois Products area at the Shed this year. We're going to be a little different than being in the Artisans Building. And then in September, I think it's the 15th and 16th, or 16th and 17th of September, we have a huge festival up in Utica. It's called Vintage Illinois. It looks like Woodstock. I could not believe the number of people. They are lined up from a mile to get into this place, and everybody brings their coolers and their little picnic tables and their lunches, and then they stake out their area and they go around and taste 28 different types of wines, or 28 different types of businesses that have multitude of wines.
And then lastly, the other thing is, I'm sure some of these are attracting people from out of the state, so they're bringing money into the state. What marketing, if any, are you marketing like outside the state? As I was saying, I grew up in the St. Louis area. I just don't, if you're not, are you looking to do that kind of thing to make people more aware of what's going on in Illinois?
We would love to have the opportunity to do that again, but with the state being in the financial situation, the DCEO money that we used to receive, we no longer receive. And without that money, no, we cannot market outside the state. So we're at a disadvantage because, like I had told you off camera, we don't have a funding source that's a permanent funding source. For example, in Missouri, they get 29% of the excise tax. California gets their excise tax. Michigan gets their excise tax. I mean, Iowa gets all of theirs. I mean, those organizations, you can build a business and you can actually help an industry grow and stay in Illinois. But without funds, I mean, everything will go away.
That's another thing that maybe we need to have the lawmakers take a look at, huh?
It would be awesome if they would take a look at it and at least consider it, because these are jobs in rural Illinois that are keeping businesses in Illinois, and it would not have grown from 13 wineries in 1995 to 108 wineries today without that support from the state.
Do you know offhand, we said $700 million as far as revenue being generated. Do you have any number as far as how much tax revenue is now going to the state?
$55 million is what we, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Probably a small fraction of that you could have a marketing budget.
It would be awesome to have that, yes. Yes.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Terry, for the opportunity.
Next, from Springfield, we attend a press conference with home builders explaining why they're opposed to a bill that would tax home repairs. This runs about 25 minutes.
We are the Home Builders Association of Illinois. We are a trade association of 1,800 people throughout the state of Illinois that make up home builders, remodelers, developers, repair persons, and associated businesses that create and enhance home ownership in the state of Illinois. I am Bill Ward. I'm Executive Vice President for the Home Builders Association of Illinois. I'm joined today by my president, Alan Drews, Dean Graven, immediate past president, Jason Poliaka, secretary of HBAI, Debbie Miller, first vice president of HBAI, Dave Padgett, president of Greater Southwest Home Builders Association, and Leanne Bergner, who is executive officer for the Greater Springfield Association of Home Builders. We are here today to expose to the media and to the public the vague language that is in Senate Bill 9 that creates a tax on home repair. If you'll look over here to this board, Senate Bill 9, Amendment number 2, states that the purchase of service means the acquisition of the repair service, alteration, fitting, cleaning, painting, coating, towing, inspection, or maintenance of tangible personal property or tangible personal property that has been affixed to real estate for a valuable consideration. This language is contained in Senate Bill 9 that was introduced in January and has been sitting on the Senate floor on third reading ever since, and it really hasn't been reported on all that much. And the reason why is because nowhere in here does it say home repair. And so we're here today to tell you and get out to the public that Illinois State Senate has a bill that's part of the grand bargain that creates home repair taxation in the state of Illinois. Amendment number 2, which is already on the bill, which did not have a hearing in committee, creates a 5% excise tax. What I've been told is that they really want amendment number 3, which would create a service tax, and that rate would be 6.25%. This is part, like I said, this is part of the grand bargain. It's part of a 500-page omnibus bill for increasing taxes in various ways for the state of Illinois. If passed into law, homeowners will now pay 6.25% on all home repair work. The National Association of Home Builders reports that this will have a decrease in home repair work in the state of Illinois of $47.2 million and will lay off 521 workers that are currently in the home repair business. This tax was taken from the state of Wisconsin, and the grid that's used by their Department of Revenue is difficult to interpret and will be difficult to assess and collect accurately. Home repairmen and women will be set up for a tax audit. There's no doubt about it. Senior citizens and other homeowners on limited income will be forced to forego will be forced to forego needed repair work on their homes. At least one city in the state of Illinois has already recognized this and has passed a resolution opposing the home repair tax in Senate Bill 9. Homes hit by storms or fire damage are going to be hardest hit by this tax. On a $20,000 damage to a home, the tax will amount to $1,250 in repair work, a substantial increase that will either be paid by the homeowner or by their insurance. If it's paid by the insurance, then it will be likely that your home insurance will increase. Home repair tax and the other 7 service areas have been chosen out of 168 service areas to start collecting taxes on services provided in Illinois. This creates a narrow-based form of taxation that generates fewer dollars than a broad-based form of taxation, but creates a heavy burden on those particular sectors. Those sectors, besides home repair, include warehouse storage, landscaping, laundry and dry cleaning, cable television, private alarm services, pest control, and personal care services like cosmetics, tattooing, and massage. The home repair tax will send home repair work underground. It will, with offers from repair people to forego the tax with cash payments. This will be bad for the homeowner and will increase home repair fraud in the state of Illinois. It also should be noted that Illinois is 50th in the United States in new home construction based on a ratio of permits to population. We've been at that lowest rung on the ladder for 5 years. Builders attempting to diversify, to stay alive, moved into the repair business to keep their businesses afloat. Now they feel the state is on the attack with new taxes and regulations that will take their businesses down once again. Homeowners in Illinois already pay their fair share with what is some of the highest property taxes in the country. The Illinois General Assembly should be doing all they can to create and improve home ownership, not make it more expensive to live in Illinois. Legislators will tell you that Senate Bill 9 is dead, and that may be true, along with the rest of the grand bargain. But we believe that in the days and weeks ahead, that there will surely be attempts to raise taxes, cut costs, and pass a budget balance here in Springfield. The Home Builders Association of Illinois respectfully requests that the Senate and House take a look at broader-based forms of taxation shared by all that makes that plan happen. I have with me now Dean Graven, immediate past president of the Home Builders Association, and he wants to speak about the amendment. Dean?
Thanks, Bill. Like a graven image, G-R-A-V-E-N? Exactly. Very good. First name's in the dictionary, last name's in the dictionary. When I first was informed by Bill of this taxation and tried to read through the multiple hundreds of pages, it was apparent to me that this was going to be something that the consumer would not have any clue. So I have a good relationship with the city council and the mayor of Springfield. I immediately went to them and asked for a resolution about 5 weeks ago for them to support our opposition to this. It was very interesting that they did it very quickly, but they brought up 2 areas that I'm very concerned about, and they picked up very quickly. One was the blighted areas. Those are the homes that have been built back in the 50s, 60s, and before, and those are being torn down in this city at a record pace of hundreds a year. And that blighted area is on a very limited income. So if you want to add something to a distressed area, you don't want to add a tax and slow it down even further. So that was a very detailed discussion at City Hall. The next was on fixed incomes. A lot of our senior citizens can't afford to downsize because of the property tax. I talked to hundreds of people over the last few years of downsizing, and they realize if they're moving from a house they've lived in for 30 or 40 years and they want to downsize to a new home, their property tax will increase by thousands. So the fixed income need to stay where they're at and not be taxed any further. As we're 50th place in new home construction, we're near the top, if not first or second, in the highest property taxes in the nation. So that's another tax on top of the American dream to own a home. So we don't need any more taxes by owning a home. Bill mentioned the other was under the radar, where we would have people trying to do repairs for cash and not have to report it. So it takes less time out of their day, and the consumer would not have to pay the tax. Well, Attorney General Madigan has a bill, or has a resolution and a state code that says every time I touch a house and spend $1,000 in terms of home repair or remodeling, this consumer has a right to know all the details, how the contract's written. I can only see this document being thrown off the table, and then eventually everything would be done under the table, so I don't have to collect the tax, do the audits, do the revenue, and then I can do it under the table. So we're not helping promote business, we're hurting business. So with the resolution being passed at City of Springfield, I'm hoping the Senate and the legislators will listen to us and oppose this bill. Thank you.
I have now Alan Drews, President of the Home Builders Association of Illinois.
Thank you, Bill. One of the points that Bill has made is the vagueness of this bill. What is vague to us is what will it really encompass. One of the things that in that encompassing is, are we repairing or are we replacing? And this is a repair tax as opposed to replacement. The vagueness would also go further into, do we have to pass this bill before we get to know it? We've heard this before. And if it goes from, gets passed and it goes into rules, what will change? Will it go from just a repair to replacement? So you do extensive remodeling and you're going to see a 6.25% tax. That'll be a huge burden on everybody in Illinois, as we're seeing more people leaving Illinois right now than they are coming in. So we need to balance that and get rid of this altogether. And to add to what Dean was saying, going underground and people are going to be paying cash for the repairs, what does that do to repairs? The quality of those repairs will probably go down too. So the people are going to be victimized potentially by some of these construction people who work out of their trunk, as opposed to being a truly legit business. So we would like to see this resolved. Thank you.
Lastly, I have Dave Padgett, President of Greater Southwest Illinois Home Builders.
Thank you, Bill. I agree with both of what these guys have said. The vagueness of this bill, I may have a remodeling project where I have to have two separate contracts with a homeowner because some of it's repairs, some of it's replaced, and we don't know which way it gets taxed. Also with senior citizens and people on fixed incomes, allowing their homes to go into disrepair because they just simply can't pay the additional tax that would cost to repair their home. But our company and our organization lives in kind of a unique situation. I live 10 to 15 miles from downtown St. Louis. We constantly hear of businesses leaving Illinois because of regulations and everything else. Well, our business would not leave Illinois. We would just not do work on the Illinois side of the river. If it is a home service, our home service division would just go serve the St. Louis metropolitan area and not the Metro East. So this tax burden that we'd have to pass on to our customers would also increase our taxes or our accounting services to try and make sure that we're paying this correctly. It's just a snowball effect for us. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I just want to make the point that the way this is administered in the state of Wisconsin is there is a grid that home repair persons have to look at when they tax. And it has a long list of different things that can be repaired. And then to the side it says whether it is a remodel or if it is a repair. And if it is a repair, then it's taxed. And if it's remodeled, then you don't have to do the tax? Well, on any given remodeling job, you're going to have some remodeling and some repair. And the members of the Home Builders Association are very afraid that they're going to get that assessment wrong, be audited, and pay penalties to the Department of Revenue.
If I have a roof that I want to replace on a house, is the new roof considered installation or repair, or do you know?
Well, one of the worst promises in Springfield is we'll take care of you in Rules Committee. And the answer to that is we really don't know yet. In the state of Wisconsin, if you install a roof, I think you don't get taxed. But if you have a hole in your roof and you need repair work on that, you would certainly be taxed for that.
You have a tax credit you say is a better solution and raise more revenue. I don't understand how a tax credit raises revenue.
Well, I think if you ask yourself the question, is it better to have neighborhoods and communities take care of their homes and their communities, then if that's a good thing for our society, then maybe you want to incentivize that being done. The opposite of that is like earlier in session, they considered soda pop tax, a tax on sugary drinks. That was recommended as a way to create broad-based taxation, and yet, but lower the amount of consumption of sugary drinks. Same thing would happen with home repair work. If you tax it, then the amount of home repair will go down.
How does a tax credit generate revenue?
Through many means. Sales tax at when you're buying lumber, when you're buying materials, and all the things that go into it currently are going to create new revenue for the state of Illinois. The more you pick up business in the state of Illinois, the more revenue that's going to be created.
Can you address the questions about expertise? Say a consumer sees what they could be taxed if they go to a repair company, and they say, you know what, I could save a couple $1,000 if I just do it myself. What are the pitfalls there?
The pitfalls are probably that it won't get done, and that the homes will probably go into disrepair. If they do it themselves, then maybe it'll be built to code, maybe it won't. But that will be something that the individual homeowner will have to decide for themselves what to do.
One of the things the legislature is considering, and this is somewhat of a specific application of it, should we have just an across-the-board tax on all economic activity? If I'm a widget maker, why should I pay a tax and a lawyer doesn't on their economic services? So rather than specifically saying this or that, it shouldn't matter to me whether it's a repair or a replace. If it's economic activity, you could just tax it, and therefore probably lower the tax rate, the argument is, because you're not just taxing certain economic activity, you have a broader base but a lower rate.
Right. I think
you all have any kind of a reaction to that approach.
Yeah, I think that exposes the unfairness of this particular tax. Like I said before, it was stated by the Taxpayers Federation of Illinois that there are a possible 168 sectors that could be taxed under the service tax. Yet this amendment only taxes 8 of them. So there is a tremendous burden put on these 8 sectors while the other 160 are not taxed, and it's probably done so to allow for a low amount of political friction in order to pass the bill.
Well, I'm hearing a couple of messages here. One is we need to have a broader base. It needs to be a lot closer to 168 than 8. But I'm also hearing, are you kidding? Tax our group? No way. Where is it, or is it a little of each?
It might be a little of each, but I think that the thing you've got to look at is that if you create some sort of broad-based taxation that's carried by everyone and that is low, it's going to be an easier burden than by putting one particular tax on the homeowner to have to pay a lot when it is being assessed.
You mentioned that we're 50th of all the states when it comes to new home construction. What do you think is the cause of that?
low consumer confidence. It's the number one thing that drives the purchase of a new home is the confidence that you have and that you have a job and that your income will increase over time. And consumer confidence is very low in the state of Illinois.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.
Next, we head to Lincoln Land Community College in Springfield, where Governor Rauner talks to young entrepreneurial students about the process of building businesses. This runs about 25 minutes.
Good morning. Nice to see you. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for your passion for business. Thank you for your passion for entrepreneurship and your strong desire to be leaders and be CEOs. You are going to be creating the future jobs in Illinois. You're the future of Illinois, and I work for you. Everything I do every day is to have you, our young people, our future leaders, have a better future. Everything I do, every decision we make is designed to have you have a better future. We focus on two things here in our administration in Illinois. One, having the best education system in America. We're putting more money into our schools, into your high schools, all the schools across Illinois. We want to support not only our high schools, our elementary schools, our early childhood education, our community colleges, our university system. We want the best education system in America. We're working to do that. The other thing we need to do is create an environment where entrepreneurs and business owners can build their businesses. An environment where you can be competitive, where you can grow, where you can have confidence that your business will succeed. So you keep the regulations on you reasonable, keep the tax burden on you reasonable, make sure that we've got a network of support, mentoring opportunities and financing opportunities, and a strong, vibrant economy. So you have customers here, you have suppliers here, you have a great workforce coming up in an education system that you can hire, people that you can hire and make your business thrive and be competitive. Everything we're doing is to try to achieve that. You know, I've been governor for 2 years. I was never been in public service before that. I'd been a business builder. I'd actually been a venture capitalist. You guys know what a venture capitalist is? I helped start, my partners and I helped start about 400 companies over 32 years. And a lot of them failed. Actually, I think the majority of them failed. But you know what? A lot of them succeeded. And some of them succeeded, you know, incredibly. You know, grew 100%, 1,000%, and created a lot of new jobs and a lot of prosperity for a lot of people. Many of them were in Illinois, but many of them were across the United States of America. And you know, who we did this for, with the money that we invested in these young companies to help them grow, was primarily pension money, retirement money, and mostly from teachers. Teachers' retirement pensions were our major investor. The teachers, so I worked for 32 years for teachers in Illinois, teachers in 27 states around America, along with law enforcement officers and other public servants who had retirement funds, and we needed to make sure that they got a good return so they could have a good retirement. And I was very honored, we were very blessed in our firm. I helped start it in 1981. I was there for 33 years. And in that period of time, we had a net compound annual return of about 22%. So we got well over double the stock market. So we created billions of dollars of new wealth inside the pension funds so our teachers could have a better retirement. And taxpayers could save billions of dollars. That was money we didn't have to put in the pensions because our investments did so well. And I was very blessed by that. You know, we made a lot of money doing it. But some people criticize me for having made a lot of money. I don't never criticize, you know, I never apologize for it. Worked hard, did well. Didn't inherit any money. My grandparents lived in a little double-wide trailer. They had dairy cows and corn. And they spoke Swedish. They didn't speak a lot of English. But my grandfather was my role model in life. He taught me 3 things, and I've tried to live my life by the 3 things of my grandfather. He said, number 1, he said, Bruce, whatever you choose to do in your life, give it 100% your best effort. Work your tail off. Be passionate about what you do. Work really hard. It's hard work. Giving everything your best is a source of internal satisfaction, and it's what life's about. He said, work your tail off. Really be proud of your work and give it 100% your best effort, whatever you choose to do. Secondly, he said, get a great education. You know, he didn't get a good education. He was, I think he got through 7th grade, I'm not sure. Back in those days, a lot of people didn't complete school. They had to go back and work on the family farm. And that's what he did. He was a dairy farmer in Wisconsin. He said, get a good education, go as far as you can, because that's the way you improve yourself. That's the way you can be the most that you can be. And he said the third thing is, make sure to give back in your community. We have a moral duty to give back and to help each other. And I believe that very strongly. He said, you know, everybody needs some help, and we have a duty to help. And so what I believe, as a good book says, to whom much has been given, from whom much is expected in return. I made a lot of money, but I told my 6 kids, Diane and I have had the discussion with them. I said, well, I'm not taking the money with me when I go, and I'm not going to give it to you. I'm going to. 2 of my kids were pretty cranky about that, I got to say. But I said, you know, it's important to help in the community and give back. So my wife and I have taken the money that we've made and we give back. We build schools, we build libraries, we build churches, we built the Red Cross headquarters for the Midwest in Chicago, we built the YMCA, we fund teacher training, principal development. My wife's dedicated her life to early childhood education, so that in child care, kids who are growing up in poverty and difficult circumstances can get a good education in child care when they're 2, 3, 4 years old, so when they get to first grade, they're ready to thrive. And these kids come from the most challenging circumstances, and they thrive when they're getting ready to go to first grade. So this is what we try to do to give back. And I decided to run for governor because I thought this is my chance to give back too. I don't take a pay. I don't take a pension. I'm a volunteer as governor, and I'm doing this because I love Illinois. And the key, the reason I ran, better schools, because we're the worst funded schools in America. I don't know if you know this. We give the lowest percentage of school funding of any state. And I said, no more of that. We're going to have a lot more money for our schools. And number 2, I said, we should be one of the fastest growing economies. We should have more businesses growing, more entrepreneurs building, more job creation than any state. We got the best people, best location. And now if you guys know this, Illinois for 17 years, we have not created any net new jobs. Think about that. Think about that. This is a failure. This is a failure of our government. We've created an environment with lots of regulations, restrictions, filings, fees, and we have the highest property taxes in America. We are very punishing for small businesses, and so a lot of our businesses have been moving elsewhere. And I said, no more. We're going to change it. We're going to become much more pro-entrepreneurs like you guys, pro-growth, pro-job creation, get the red tape and regulations off our entrepreneurs, bring down our property taxes, and then we'll thrive. More education quality and an environment to improve our business climate and have entrepreneurs like you create your businesses, and we'll kick tails. That's what we're striving to do every day. We've made a lot of progress. We've cut lots of red tape, cut lots of restrictions. We're working on getting a property tax freeze, bring down our property taxes. We're making progress. It's slow. Change is hard. You know, it's taken a long time to get the changes, but we're going to get them done. And I'm so excited to be here with you guys. So I love doing Q&A. So any questions you got about being governor, about the government, and about entrepreneurship, I can tell you a lot of war stories about building businesses. We backed, well, we started 400 companies. We probably backed 300 entrepreneurs. And, you know, the lessons learned, it's a pretty amazing process. Yes?
What is like the most challenging thing that you've been through in your life? Right?
The most challenging? Well, boy, that's a good question. So I'll tell you some of the primary 3 lessons that I've come away with actually after having started so many companies. I would say number 1, everything gets done through team. Everything that you do, as you're thinking about yourself, think about your team. Who's with you? Who do you need? What skills do you need to be with you? Everything gets done through a team. And your team should be complementary skills. You don't want people who have exactly the same background, exactly the same mindset. You want a diversity, you want different points of view, and you want to respect your team and bring them together to solve problems where you're with give and take and mutual respect. Team number 1. Number 2, treat other people the way you would like to be treated. You know, in business sometimes there's a dictatorial, like, you know, I'm your boss, I'll tell you what to do or not to do. You know, what I've found very much is people who are what I'll call collegial. They're very respectful of people at every level of an organization, treat everybody as a team member and as a partner, and listen. Some of the best ideas for a business and best problem solving comes from people who aren't necessarily in charge of that department or in charge of that issue. And they're maybe at some other level of the organization, and they have some of the best ideas. Treating people with respect and treating them the way you would like to be treated, whatever level of a company you're in, really important. And just like the Bible says, you know, this to whom much, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. treat people with that kind of mutual respect, critically important. And then I would say the third issue, and this is really, to me, it's maybe the most important thing I can tell you as you're starting out in your lives and your careers. Your reputation is your most important asset. Some people say it's your education, some people say it's your family or your circumstance or your amount of money you got. Your most important asset is your reputation. Guard it jealously, do every decision you make, keep it with integrity, and have a reputation for being high integrity, doing the right thing at all times, and that whether any company succeeds or fails, you did the right thing at all times. Your reputation is your most important asset. When people invest in you, and if you're going to build a business, you're going to want investors. When you build a business, you're going to want board members. When you build a business, you're going to want other management members to join your team. Your reputation is the basis upon which they join you. Guard your reputation. Be known for quality and integrity and doing the right thing. Those are the biggest lessons I can tell you. Yes? Boy, great success. You know, success, let me ask you a question. How do you define success? Okay, so achieving one's goal. So, like, for example, how do you define that? What's a goal? What goal would you have? Okay, well, that's a good goal. That's great. So everybody defines success in their own way. Some people define success by how much money you make. I don't. Some people define success by your, status. I don't. My personal definition of success is how much better off is the world, is our community, because we were here. Is the world a better place because we're here or not? Do we make a difference? Did we make a difference, or did we sort of just eat and sleep and, And so how much better off is the world because we're here? That's, to me, is my definition of success. Everybody's got their own. I encourage you all to think about what defines success. Happiness, in my opinion, we can get a lot of philosophy here, but happiness in your core and enjoyment of life comes from making a positive difference. It doesn't necessarily come from money, doesn't necessarily come from, maybe success is how many friends do you have? Well, I would argue nobody has more than a few really, really true good friends. People know a lot of people, and people might be fond of each other at some level, but a true friendship, having true friends, boy, that's a part of success in life. And I've been very blessed. I don't have tons of friends. I know a lot of people. And some people say they were my friends, but it's more a friendship of convenience than true friendship. Especially you'll learn that pretty quickly, whatever career you go into. But I've got good friends, close friends. We would do anything for each other. One of my best friends is from 3rd grade. We've been friends since 3rd grade. We know everything about each other. And some of my best friends are from my high school. I got about 5 buddies from high school. We still get together. We still go on camping trips together. We still talk about business together. And then I've got 4 friends from college. We were in fraternity together. We went through college together. We built businesses together. We're very close. We and our spouses travel once a year to go somewhere fun, go to New Orleans and just hang out and listen to jazz or whatever. But we know each other. We love each other. We respect each other. And how much money anybody's got, what their title is in life, doesn't matter. We care about each other, and we want to work together to help each other achieve our dreams and our goals. That's a wonderful thing. So true friendship and making the world a better place, to me, those are successes. It's not title. It's not money. It's not about who you know. It's about what's in your heart and what it achieved. And happiness comes, in my opinion, from those things. Yes? Oh, boy. Favorite book? I would say James. My family, let's talk about religion for a second. This is an important subject, because it's a volatile time around religion in America. So my family, deeply religious. My dad's family, German Catholic. And they came from Germany to Illinois. They were immigrants in 1854. And they were corn farmers up in Lake County. My grandfather was German Catholic, who was deeply religious. He went to Mass almost every day. My grandmother was Catholic, and she got disillusioned. She got disillusioned. She saw war, and she saw a lot of the challenges in the world. And she said, you know, I'm worried that religion causes a lot of the suffering in the world, you know, fighting and disagreements. And she began to really question her faith. And we had some very interesting conversations when I was little between sometimes my grandmother would beat up my grandfather and say, you're going to Mass again? Let's talk about, what do you believe? Why is this? And he would say, yes, dear, and he would go to Mass. And he was very, very religious. My mom's family, Swedish Lutheran. Lutherans were a very common denomination of Christianity in Sweden. And my grandparents came from Sweden. They were very devout Lutherans. But my grandfather used to like to drink a bit, maybe sometimes too much. And my grandmother wanted faith to help change that, so she converted to Methodism. Because Methodists don't support drinking, and she thought that might change. It didn't fix the problem. So we had some very interesting debates about that and how faith can change your, how you behave. And then my parents. So my dad was Catholic, my mom was Lutheran. They argued about it before I was born. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. And you know what? Because they didn't, either one of them really want to, they were very on their faith. So you know what? Well, my brothers and sister and I were as a compromise, we were baptized and confirmed Episcopalians. And that's true. I mean, so we had, and I'm very proud, and I got my little pins. I was very, I was the star of my Sunday school class, and I taught a lot of Sunday school. And to top it all off, my wife is Jewish. So I mean, we have 6 kids, and we have fascinating religious conversations. And it's our values. I believe that there's much more in common across the religions than differences, and that we all come from the same source, and that our values of helping each other and love. And I believe the Bible, the most important lesson in the Bible is about doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, for me. And all of us as human beings share that. We're all God's children, and we need to work together and respect each other. Yes?
You said that you dealt with a lot of family companies in the past.
Yes.
What's some of your strategies to do it?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of failures, learned a lot of lessons about that. So the most important thing is the team. What we find is when we fail, it's because we didn't have the complete team in place, or a key team member wasn't in the right role. That in the end, it's really, business is about people. It's fundamentally about people. People think it's about technology or patents or location, or those issues matter, but it's really about people. What we found is you could take a pretty marginal or difficult business, and if you had the right team, you could really do some wonderful things with it. And the flip side is you could be in a very interesting space or have some neat technology, but if you didn't have the right team, if you didn't have the right people, you weren't going to turn it into a success. So it's really, really about people. And I'll tell you, the biggest lesson I learned is the CEO matters the most. Who's the leader? Who's the inspirer? Who's the visionary? Who builds the team? Number one, who's the CEO? We were very CEO-centric. And what we found is when we would start a company with a CEO, with an entrepreneur, that integrity, their talent, their people skills, their team-building skills were most important, far and away the most important. And then what we found is when we built a business with them, a lot of times we build it for 10 years and then sell it, and it was successful. A lot of times the entrepreneur or the CEO would say, Bruce, this is awesome. I never thought I would do so well in my life. I did this for 10 years. I made $50 million. I'm done. I'm going golfing. I'm gonna give a little bit of the money to my local church, and I'm gonna spend time with my kids, and I'll see you. I say, okay, great. God bless you. Good luck. Within about 18 months, sometimes about a year, they generally get a call back. Bruce, I love my family, but they kind of are they're moving on with life, and my wife is like, or my spouse, sometimes a man, sometimes a woman. My spouse is, they don't need to see me at lunch every day. I mean, and that was fun. I kind of miss it. I miss the work, and I miss the battle. And a lot of times they say, could we go do that again? And we'd say, sure, let's start another company. And there were some entrepreneurs we started 3 companies with. There's some we started 4 companies with. And that passion for building a business and building the team and following a vision, very, very, very energizing, very, very motivating. But in terms of failure, what we found is when we pick the wrong CEO, they don't have that passion and the vision, and it doesn't work. But the second most important in virtually every company is the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer. You can have a passion and you can be in an interesting space, but if you don't have financial discipline, if you're not on your numbers, if you're not monitoring your cash flow, you get yourself in trouble very fast. And young companies are constantly challenged, and you've got to manage your cash flow and really be on top of your detail and your numbers. And if you're not, the odds of failure go way, way up. And so we found CEO most important. Number two most important in every business is the Chief Financial Officer. And they really need to be good. And we found that once we got a great CFO, we would hold on to them and just place them. We would compensate them really, really well. And as soon as they got done with one company or wanted to move on, we wouldn't let them go away. We'd say, you're our partners, be with us in all kinds of companies. And many of our CFOs work with us for multiple companies. Yes?
So there's so much growth in the school system throughout Illinois, and there's a lot of need. And I'm just wondering, how do you gauge where to prioritize your efforts and your resources to be putting if there is such a wide range of
need in our education system? Okay, well, that's a great question. So boy, I could talk all day on education. So I ran for governor because I wanted to have the economy growing fast and be very competitive, and I want the best education system in America. Two things, actually many things we need to do to fix our education system. Two of the most important is to get more resources into it. We underfund our K-12 schools. We underfund our community colleges and our universities. And so we need a balanced budget in order to properly fund. Education should be the first priority with tax dollars. Before I became governor, in the 10 years before I became governor, we cut education funding 4 times in the prior 10 years. We would use education as the political football, and we would cut it. And I'm very proud. My first year, we increased education funding by $750 million, and we're pushing more every year. Education, most important thing. And so that's one. Number two, the way we allocate the money is very inequitable. We have the biggest gap of any state in America between what low-income school districts get per student or per teacher and what high-income school districts get per student or teacher. This is wrong. This is, in my opinion, this is immoral. And we're denying the American dream to too many low-income kids. They don't have the property wealth. Their parents may not have the income to be able to afford to put as much money into their local schools. We've got to change that. So I asked for a bipartisan task force to be formed to come up with recommendations to change our funding formula. It's very complex. But I applaud the members of the General Assembly. They came up with recommendations, and there's actually bills now drafted. The Democrats have a slightly different version than the Republicans. The Democrats would like to give quite a bit more money to Chicago, which I'm fine. I want to support all schools, but we can't have downstate taxpayers bailing out the financial mismanagement of Chicago. So it has to be a reasonable balance. But low-income schools should get disproportionately more of the money, and that's what we're striving to do too. So that's the second thing. Third, I'm a big believer, some are and some aren't. I'm a believer in school choice. I believe that parents, whether they have a high income or a low income, doesn't matter. They should be able to choose a school that fits their child the best. So I'm a believer in charter schools. They're public schools, but they are run independently and a little more creatively. So charter schools, voucher programs. I believe that parents, regardless of their income, should have school choice. The other thing that I believe very strongly is you can't really manage, you can't improve something that you're not measuring. And we don't really measure things accurately in education. And there's resistance to that. But I'll just quickly, because I'm passionate about, are we out of time? Okay. This issue gets me very going because it's critically important. In Illinois and in many states, we think a good school is one where the test scores are high. Okay? Well, that's one relevant data point, but that's not the measure of a good school. And what really matters is where did the students come into that school or that grade? If they were already really high, and in fact they were 1 year ahead when they came in, and they left 6 months ahead, so they actually went down a little bit, but their overall scores were still high, then we'd say that's a good school. It's not. It's about student growth and progress. So we need to measure from where the students start in a grade or a school and where they move over time and measure students' growth on an objective basis to understand whether the school is really performing. Okay, I got to run on to the next thing. Thank you for being entrepreneurs. Thank you for being future leaders. I'm all for you. Your success is Illinois' success. Thanks very much. Sure, happy to.